Nobody in that courtroom had ever seen a lawyer sweat like that before the proceedings even began. He was still buttoning his cufflink when the bailiff called the room to order, and the hand doing the buttoning was shaking. That detail, small, almost invisible, did not escape Judge Frank Caprio. It never does, and by the time the morning was over, that trembling hand would be the least of Marcus Aldridge's problems. Marcus Aldridge, Esquire, 44 years old. Corner office on Westminster Street, a membership at the kind of golf club that doesn't advertise, and a client list that used to include some of Providence's most vulnerable residents, elderly people, immigrants, families navigating probate and injury claims who came to him because they trusted the title on his door. He arrived that Tuesday in a charcoal wool suit that cost more than most people in that gallery made in a month. He set a leather briefcase on the table with the deliberate placement of a man who wanted everyone to register it. He did not look at the woman sitting 12 feet away from him, not once, not even by accident. That woman was Elena Vasquez, 61 years old, a retired school cafeteria worker who had spent 4 years waiting for the settlement from her husband's workplace injury claim, a claim Aldridge had been hired to manage after her husband Roberto died of complications from that injury in year 2 of the case. She wore her church clothes, a navy blue dress, pressed until there wasn't a wrinkle left. Her hands were folded in her lap, and her eyes were dry, which somehow made everything worse, because you could tell the drying had taken enormous effort. Before we go any further, if you've ever trusted someone with everything and had that trust turned into a transaction, drop a comment. Because what's about to happen in this courtroom is for every single person who was ever made to feel small by someone who was supposed to protect them. Subscribe if you believe that no title, no suit, and no briefcase makes a person untouchable. The surface complaint was straightforward. Aldridge had received a $94,000 wrongful death settlement on Elena Vasquez's behalf. She had received $31,000 of it. He claimed the remaining $63,000 had been consumed by fees, court costs, and administrative expenses. He had documentation, or so he said. Judge Caprio reviewed the initial filings and asked in that unhurried voice of his whether Aldridge could walk the court through the itemized expense breakdown. Aldridge smiled, not at the judge, at the room, the smile of a man who has given this speech before. Your Honor, the itemization is standard practice in complex estate litigation. We're talking expert witnesses, filing fees, deposition costs. He gestured at the briefcase, suggesting the answer lived inside it. I have everything here. Then let's look at it, Judge Caprio said. That's when everything changed. Because the folder Aldridge produced was organized, professional, and, as it turned out, almost entirely fabricated. The court had subpoenaed records directly from the 3 expert witnesses listed on Aldridge's expense sheet. 2 of them had never worked on the Vasquez case. 1 of them had never heard of Marcus Aldridge. Their combined listed fees on his documentation amounted to $2,800. Not a dollar of it had ever been paid to them. The 3rd expert, a medical consultant, submitted a sworn statement confirming his actual fee was $2,200, not the $11,000 claimed. The courtroom did not gasp. It went utterly, completely still, the kind of still that has weight to it, like the moment before a structure gives way. Judge Caprio looked at Aldridge over the papers in his hands. He did not raise his voice. He simply said, "Mr. Aldridge, would you like to revise anything you've told this court?" Marcus Aldridge looked at his briefcase, then at the table, then, for the first time all morning, at Elena Vasquez. And what crossed his face in that instant was not remorse. It was calculation. He was still looking for the exit. "Your Honor," he said, smoothing his tie, "there may have been some administrative errors in how the documentation was compiled. My office handles hundreds of cases and—" "Administrative errors," Judge Caprio repeated. He set the papers down. He let the phrase sit in the air of the courtroom the way you let something spoiled sit on a table so everyone in the room can smell it. You billed a grieving widow for $28,000 in expert fees paid to people who never worked her case. You collected $94,000 meant for a woman whose husband died, and you gave her $31,000. You want me to call that an administrative error? It was not a question. Everyone in that gallery understood it was not a question. "Mr. Aldridge," the judge continued, and now his voice carried something colder than anger, something far more precise, You walked in here today with a briefcase and a suit and the assumption that this court would be impressed by the same things your clients were, that the credentials would do the work, that the paper would hold. But paper is only as strong as the truth behind it, and you handed me ash and called it evidence. He paused, giving the room a moment to absorb the geometry of what he was dismantling. Elena Vasquez spent 4 years waiting for what the law entitled her to. She buried her husband. She trusted you, and you looked at her grief and saw a margin. Elena Vasquez pressed her lips together. Her hands in her lap tightened once, then released. The judge referred the matter immediately to the Rhode Island Supreme Court's Disciplinary Board with a formal recommendation for disbarment proceedings. He ordered a full forensic audit of Aldridge's client accounts. He directed that Elena Vasquez receive expedited access to a victim's restitution fund pending the outcome of criminal fraud charges, which the Providence DA's office confirmed were already being prepared. Marcus Aldridge's bar license was suspended within the week. By the following month, 2 additional former clients had come forward with nearly identical complaints. The audit uncovered discrepancies across 9 cases spanning 6 years. The charcoal suit, the golf club membership, the corner office on Westminster Street, all of it began to unravel the way things built on stolen foundations eventually must, from the bottom and all at once. Elena Vasquez used the restitution funds to pay off the remaining balance on the home she and Roberto had shared for 31 years. She kept the navy blue dress. Justice doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it arrives in the form of a quiet man with a folder of subpoenaed records and the patience to ask the right question twice. If this story reminded you that credentials are not character, share it. If you believe Elena deserved every dollar and then some, comment below. And if you want to see more stories where the truth walks through the door and refuses to leave until it's heard, subscribe, because in this courtroom, the briefcase never wins. The truth does.